Staying with human rights, from the Irish Centre for Human Rights in Galway, Erin and Muriel will give us an overview of and a summary of human rights analysis and suggest next steps. Give them a round of applause, please.
So hi everybody, my name is Muriel Moore. I work with Mulligan Solicitors.
I'm Quinn Maher.
And I'm Erin Bhaird.
So last year we completed a Masters in Human Rights, and we're very proud of ourselves, but thank you. But actually, one of the most important parts of that course for us and for the rest of our group was that we took part in a human rights clinic. And that clinic matched students with community groups that were looking for additional academic support and potential research into the work they were doing. So we paired with Muriel and with Care Champions, and we were delighted to do so. So that actually formed a big part of the course that we did, and it was a very practical aspect. So during the course of the year, throughout last year, a number of the students conducted interviews, in fact, with a lot of you who are here today and some additional people. And then we studied the transcripts of the interviews with reference to human rights. And what we read and what we heard really provoked serious cause for concern from a human rights perspective. So as other people have said here today, the Irish Commission of Human Rights, IREC, are the body who are designed to be the watchdog for human rights. And as soon as there is a violation, even if it is in a private facility, it has an obligation to investigate. And later, I know there's another session with families and people concerned. We're going to share with you a letter that we have drafted with Care Champions that we intend to send to IREC to exhort them to put in place an investigation into human rights, with the additional positive that it's a permanent body, so that it will not only call out violations of human rights, but it will also monitor change. And that's what Care Champions is about today and constantly. It's about progress, it's about monitoring progress, and it's about bringing about change. And we're very happy to be part of that. So the rights that we're going to talk about today, we're going to go specifically, the next slide, yeah. The right to life, the right to not suffer torture or humane treatment, the right to liberty and security of the person, to private and family life. So Erin is going to go in a little more detail into each of those. Thanks.
Thanks, Muriel. So first, next slide there for me. Thank you. First, we're just going to consider the fundamental human right to life. So in accordance with this right, the state must protect the right to life, investigate alleged breaches of this right, ensure that there's an effective regulatory framework in place to safeguard the right to life, in context including healthcare settings and residential care facilities. And it must also take practical steps to prevent the loss of life where it knows or ought to know that there are risks to this right. So Quinn's going to read an excerpt from one of the interviews that we did, which raises concerns in regards to this right.
All right. This is just one excerpt from our interviews, which raises concerns in terms of the right to life. He was really unwell. He had said to me, "I'm dying. I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't know what's going on here, that I'm going to die." And he said them words to me, and I rang them, and they said, "No, he's normal. He's just fine."
So moving on to look now at the prohibition of torture and inhuman or degrading treatment. This right is absolute, so under no circumstances may there be exceptions made to this right. Degrading treatment can be characterised as treatment which causes anguish and humiliation, and this need not be intentional to be characterised as such. So in the context of detention, the European Court of Human Rights has found that failure to provide opportunities for fresh air, for recreation, for contact with the outside world, this does engage the right to be free from torture and inhumane or degrading treatment. And the state has a clear obligation to protect vulnerable people, such as those who live in nursing homes, from such treatment.
Right. This is just one excerpt from one of our interviews that raises concerns about the prohibition of torture, inhumane and degrading treatment. The practical care stopped. You know, I'd find out later from a whistleblower staff member that mom had a really bad bed sore, you know, going from her back down to her thigh, that it was bleeding. It looked as if the skin was eating itself. The staff member asked for it to be tested for MRSA. It looked that bad, and the director of nursing literally said, you know, that's just the skin breaking down. There's nothing we can do. Put moisturizer on it. She wasn't giving any extra pain relief that we know of. So, you know, she had a very painful ending.
So moving on now to consider the right to liberty and security of the person. In social care settings, this can look like continuous control, restrictions on your ability to leave, and a lack of free and valid consent to being in detention. And while it may be permissible in some circumstances to restrict this right in order to prevent the spread of infectious diseases such as COVID-19, restrictions must have a clear legal basis, and they must be used only as a last resort. And detained persons, they have to know at all times why they're being detained. They have to have access to legal assistance at all times, and they must be able to challenge the restriction of their rights in this regard.
All right. This is just one excerpt from our interviews that raises concerns about the right to liberty. She didn't like that she was locked in. They were her words. Yeah, you know, she would be in her room for, you know, days and days on end, sometimes up to kind of 3 weeks at a time, if there was any outbreak at all.
The right to private and family life then, so this encompasses a lot of really important elements such as the touch on personal dignity and autonomy. It encompasses the development and maintenance of personal relationships and familial relationships, a person's home, communication and privacy rights, as well as physical and psychological well-being. So again, these rights may be restricted in certain circumstances, but these restrictions have to have a clear legal basis. They have to be absolutely necessary and they must be proportionate.
This is just one of our excerpts from our interviews that raises concerns about private and family life. And my dad didn't do well on his own. Nobody does. We're human. We like and we need human contact, you know, and when we would see me, he would just know everything would be okay, and I would fix everything, and I would see who I needed to see to get things done. And yeah, I wasn't allowed in. He said that to me on many occasions when he was really sick and he thought he was going to die. He said, I just don't want to die on my own. And presto, that's exactly what happened.
So finally turning then to consider very briefly the right to equality and to non-discrimination. So everyone has the right to be treated equally, to not be discriminated on grounds such as your age and any disabilities or medical conditions that you may have.
This last interview excerpt we will share is from a family member who still believes unfair treatment of nursing home residents is continuing. I do believe that this is still going on in a redacted nursing home. I do believe that. These people are not being treated fairly. They are not being treated like people, like individuals.
So, on the basis of the serious human rights concerns raised as part of these interviews and some of them that the participants have raised here today, we, along with Care Champions and so many others who've spoken today and others as well, we're calling on the Irish Human Rights and Equality Commission to exercise their powers to conduct a dedicated, public, human rights-based inquiry into the experiences of people who lived in nursing homes and died in nursing homes during the pandemic, and their families and people who work there as well. So thank you so much, everyone, for your time. I speak on behalf of all of us when I say it's an honour to be here and to participate today. Yeah, thank you.